G'day, Binansians, and welcome to this week's Binance Beach. We are back, and wow, what a week in markets! It has been truly, I think, historic. Absolutely wild watching what's going on this week. And to break it all down with us, we have crypto analyst Adam Stokes. Welcome back to the show, mate.
Liam, so good to see you, my friend. What a wild ride indeed.
Truly, truly. How have you been feeling over the last couple of days? It's got to be exhausting just keeping track of all this stuff, right?
I'm glad you asked that question, the feeling, because of course markets are made up of people. People are made up of emotions, and those emotions lead to buys and sells. But people are stressed, people are scared. Not just in the crypto markets, but across the world. We're worried about our superannuation funds. We're worried about the future of what's going to happen between, of course, now no longer Russia and Ukraine, but now China and America. So it always seems there's some type of flashpoint around the world where we keep transitioning from one area to another. But of course, Liam, as we discussed just before we went live, we checked out the charts this morning after thinking the whole world is going to end, noting that last night China put on reciprocal tariffs again against the United States. And I thought that would lead to a bleed out in the markets of crypto. But of course, it's the complete opposite. We've got Bitcoin up 8.48% in less than 24 hours. XRP up nearly 15%, ETH up nearly 15%. Green across the board, my friend. It's absolutely spectacular. So, how do I feel? I feel confused, but I also feel excited because I think the technology of crypto is not broken. Everything is still moving forward. It's just the political games in the background. Not to mention, of course, we've got the political campaign in Australia happening right now. That doesn't really affect the markets too much compared to what is happening between Trump and Xi.
Yeah, but on the other side, I think what is happening in the markets is definitely going to be overflowing into what happens in the local Aussie elections. But we're not a political show, so we won't talk about that. We'll stay on topic. I mean, yeah, let's try and do a bit of a recap of what's happened here in the last couple of weeks or in the last week. Honestly, there's like so much to cover that I'm not even going to try and get everything. But we'll try and kind of keep it a high level and give you guys a bit of a recap on what's gone on. So obviously we had Liberation Day, where Trump announced a whole bunch of broad sweeping tariffs across a whole range of both kind of friendly and maybe not so friendly trading partners, and that really caused what could only be described as a bit of a capitulation event down on the 6th and the 7th. Bitcoin and traditional markets ran down really significantly from that mid 80 or low 80s level for Bitcoin, around the $82,000 mark, right down to $74,000, which was a pretty significant move downwards of, what's that, about 15%. Then we had fake news around potentially the tariffs being paused. And then we had a bit of a market recovery, potentially a bit of a bull trap back up to that $80,000 level. Then it was, oh no, it's fake news. And markets crashed right down again to that $75,000 level mark for Bitcoin. And then as of this morning, when we've woken up, we've heard that tariffs have been paused again for another 90 days. And we've got a really significant move across the crypto markets and across the traditional markets. I believe one of the biggest movements in the NASDAQ and the S&P for quite some time, if not ever. And then for crypto, a pretty significant move too. Bitcoin was up like 8%, ETH moved like 15%. And yeah, across the rest of our kind of top assets, it really has been very volatile. XRP up 15%, Solana back up 13%, Doge up 12.5%. Wow, what a week. If we look at this on the crypto market cap again, you can see that whole market tumble down, and then straight back up. And yeah, what's really crazy to note is we basically landed kind of where we were like 2 or 3 days ago, back in that low 80s range. Yeah, Adam, can you break it down? Can you give us any kind of indication on what's gone on here and how to feel about this?
What's interesting is it's how quickly these markets react. So within seconds of news coming out, the markets react, and of course we've had fake posts come out which end up being true. It reminds me of the time that we had remember that a while ago when the BTC ETFs were going to be announced, and the BTC, there was a leak, a fake leak from Gensler's X post from memory, and it said the
Mm.
BTC ETFs were approved, and the whole market's pumped, and then it came out and said, "Oh no, that was a fake post. I didn't say that." So then the market's dumped, and then he came out and said, "Right now it's approved," and then they pumped again. So we've seen it before. We've seen this before where we react so quickly. And what's very dangerous if you're a trader, if you're longing and shorting your positions, you think everything's going in a certain direction. You're looking at the technicals, but then the fundamentals and the macro comes in. And it's like, no, the macro is going to definitely trump the technicals because anything that's happening in the political space will wipe out whatever's happening technically on a chart. And so you think that you got your technical sorted, but then you're right, no, I'm going to go to the macro, I'm going to listen to the political stance. But then a political leader comes out and says, right, we're pausing for 90 days, and you just can't see that. You just can't predict it. So what do we all do as investors? Ultimately, we need to keep our emotions in check. We need to keep calm, and we need to not react as soon as something happens. It's the analogy I've given before, Liam, is if you're trying to steer a big ship and there's an obstacle that appears to be in front of you, if you suddenly turn the wheel, I don't know, 90 degrees starboard, it's going to take ages to steer that ship around that obstacle. And then if the obstacle appears to move, then you steer the ship back again. You're trying to chase a path with a ship that's moving so slow. When it comes to us as trading, if you're constantly trying to change your path, right, I'm going up, I'm going down, I'm selling, I'm buying, you're actually going to just burn juice and you're not going to keep your course and you're going to end up wrapping yourself around a reef or something. What I'm trying to say here is we need to look forward and not only look into, I guess, the 7 days ahead of us or the 30 days ahead of us. The real question, Liam, is has this fundamentally changed Bitcoin? Has it changed the supply of Bitcoin? Has it changed the algorithm? Has it changed the investments or the ETFs? Has it changed the fact that fiat is unlimited and Bitcoin is scarce? None of that has changed. The only thing that really changed was a buying opportunity. And that buying opportunity was to buy the crap out of that dip. And I'm so proud of many of the members in my community because they understood that in the big picture, nothing changed. All that changed was some noise in the background. They saw the dip, they made the move, they bought the crap out of that dip, and now look where they are. They're well ahead. The question, of course, is what happens next? Do we keep this rally up for a while? Is it going to be another change in 90 days? Do we move into kinetic war? As you said, we don't like to get too political, but the reality is politics seems to be now driving this market. Political moves from political leaders in different countries appear to be steering these markets in certain directions, which is why I recommend everyone reads some of Trump's books. Doesn't matter if you like him or hate him. If you want to succeed in markets, need to understand the influences on those markets. And the major influence on the market at the moment is Donald Trump. He is pushing the markets around. But if you understand how he thinks, if you understand the art of the deal, and you understand his intent, you understand that this is all a game, this is all showmanship, it's needed, and it makes sense what he's doing. It upsets those who don't understand what's happening. But for those who understand the art of the deal, they understand markets, they understand opportunity, they realize this is a great thing. We had a great opportunity. And even now with Bitcoin at $82,252, I would suggest it's still desperately undervalued. The same with Ethereum. Ethereum at 1600, I remind everyone that Ethereum was at 5K. Ethereum is on a fire sale at the moment. And pick your coin out there. It's all bargain basements ready to go. I'm feeling very bullish, my friend. Very bullish indeed.
It's good to have some hopium. It's nice to hear some optimism. Do you think like nothing's changed in terms of Bitcoin fundamentals, right? It's still producing blocks, you still have the hard cap. But do you think something changed this week in terms of the US dollar reserve status and how Bitcoin could potentially be a competitor for a global reserve currency? Do you think anything changed in that regard this week?
That's a fantastic question. I don't think it's so much that this week was the main turning point. I actually think it was when the tariffs, or correction, the sanctions were put on Russia. That was the main
Mm.
turning point because it was a big wake up to the world that said, hey, we've got this global reserve currency and you should all be using it. But if you do anything that upsets America, wrongly or rightly, that's irrelevant. We avoid that part in this discussion. It showed the world that if you upset someone else, you're cut out of the financial system. Your bank accounts are seized, you're cut out of the SWIFT network, you're accused of being an oligarch, and you can no longer participate. So you are forced to go somewhere else. Now, with what's happening this week, we can see when it comes to tariffs, it's actually questioning, well, who's really in charge and why are they in charge, and what independence do we have? What independence do we have from the global reserve currency, from sanctions, tariffs, and being called an oligarch? And what independence do we have as trading nations when we want to work with the center of gravity being the United States or other nations? Or when it comes to, hey, what can we produce ourselves? On the show last night, I was saying this is actually an opportunity for all of us to reflect individually and nationally. What can we produce in Australia, and what way are we a hostage to Big Daddy, Big Brother, United States? And now the whole world is reflecting. And the other thing to end this, I would suggest it's making us all understand what is money. Most people have never been taught about money. They haven't been taught about sanctions. They haven't been taught about trading policy. And now, as a result, everyone's talking about it. And people are learning, many people are learning, well, what is a tariff? And of course, what we're learning throughout crypto is, well, what is money and who gets to produce it and who gets to control it? So it's a great time for the whole world to reflect. And love or hate Trump, he's making us all do it collectively. One man in one nation is making planet Earth look inwards and say, well, what control do we have over our own money, our own trade, and our own future? And consequently, you're going to see many nations change their policy, I would suggest, for the better. And the other good news is, Liam, is that we're going to see interest rates drop. So love or hate him, there's been emergency meetings around the world with Federal Reserves and RBA equivalents saying, crikey, we better drop our interest rate because everyone's under a lot of pressure. So maybe your stock portfolio is not looking as good as it was a few months ago, but your mortgage rate is going to drop, and I'll take that any day of the week.
Yeah, the Kiwis dropped their interest rates. I don't think we have a meeting in Australia until the 20th of May, but yeah, like I was looking at the RBA rate tracker and that's pricing in a 50 basis point rate cut on the 20th of May with an 80% chance. But man, there's so much that could change between now and then, so it's hard to bank on that. We've seen gold do really, really well over the last few weeks and months, and even the last year, right? Gold has had an exceptional trading year. It's up about 30%. Bitcoin, obviously, up about 100 to 120%, depending on where you take the dates from. What was your take on how Bitcoin traded through this period and whether Bitcoin is starting to trade more like a safe haven asset or whether gold is still the go-to when it comes to a run away from stocks or away from treasuries? What's your take on how Bitcoin's traded over the last couple of weeks compared to gold?
Well, congratulations to all the gold buffs, particularly Peter Schiff, as you mentioned, it hit an all-time high of 3,170 US dollars. And what a really good question was put to me from the audience is, did gold hit an all-time high or did the US dollar hit an all-time low? And when you actually start to understand that what gold is compared to, what everything is compared to, that's why gold and Bitcoin's going up. So in the first instance, yep, gold hit an all-time high. Did it hit an actual purchasing power all-time high? Or did the US dollar hit an all-time low? I think it's more the latter, but in any case, I thought the all-time high for gold was actually overdue. When it comes to gold, I actually, Bitcoin, the digital gold, I actually suggest it's now generational. If you want to go through the act of buying gold, it's actually quite cumbersome. So I put it out to the viewers out there, try buying gold in Australia. You could get it from the Perth Mint, which I wouldn't go to anymore after what they did with China. But yeah, very questionable and very disappointing from an Australian entity ripping off China. But you can see that it's very difficult to get gold. It's slow. It costs a lot of money. The delivery costs a lot of money. And the demurrage cost of storing it costs a lot of money. So the younger generation is a lot more comfortable working on the internet. They like being able to buy 1 cent worth of digital gold as opposed to the minimum purchase of, well, normally a gram. You can buy specks of gold, but then it becomes very difficult. And the delivery of that gold costs more than what the gold is worth. So the whole demurrage cost of gold is so difficult, so slow, so cumbersome, so expensive. So we look at the alternative, and the alternative is digital gold. And what you can see is towards the end of last week, the entire traditional markets were crashing, but then the digital and physical golds were holding their line. Bitcoin was holding beautifully. The whole sky was falling down per se, and gold was holding its course, going up and to the right, and Bitcoin was holding its course. So we talk about Bitcoin coupling with the markets, but now perhaps what we should say is, well, in fact, Bitcoin is coupling with gold. And we're seeing this correlation more and more clearly now as we're getting more and more data that the altcoins and the traditional markets, they're doing their thing, fluttering all over the place. But digital gold and physical gold, that is AU and Bitcoin, they seem to be going up and to the right. I hold a lot of gold, but as I said, it's the demurrage cost. It's too much. It's too much to get it delivered. It's too slow. The verification process is a concern, even though you have machines that can do it. Liquidating it is a big issue. Even if I've got a big chunk of gold, how do I get rid of this thing? I can't just sell it immediately. I've got to physically go somewhere and get it tested and get it weighed and deal with the market. But when I've got digital gold, 24/7, 365 from my bed if I want, go to the best market, get the best price, and away we go. So what we're seeing now is the younger generation, of course, they understand Bitcoin. They understand the digital space. But the older generation, even though some of them are stuck in their ways, they have to look over their shoulder and say, well, why is that one performing better than mine? Why is Bitcoin performing as a multiplier better than gold? And why is Bitcoin performing better than pretty much all stocks? I better get some Bitcoin. And of course, I think we spoke about this last week, Liam, you're now seeing the big hedge fund managers in Australia, AMP as an example. AMP has invested into Bitcoin. So it's one thing to say the mums and dads are buying Bitcoin, and we've now got a strategic reserve in the States getting Bitcoin. But of course, now the next thing is the pension funds and more fund managers, not just with the ETFs in the States, but fund managers globally buying Bitcoin. It's, in my mind, it's a better buy because it's easier to manage, it's more liquid, and it has better price performance.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely got some really key advantages that you've outlined there around how divisible it is, how easily verifiable it is, how liquid it is. And so I'm really bullish and I'm really excited about our ability to hold this asset as a digital gold rather than trying to self custody physical gold, which, as you pointed out, is incredibly difficult and expensive. So, yeah, I think it's good to have a little bit of optimism. Good to hear some hopium, and yeah, nice to hear that not everybody's panicking, and we've got a little bit of a level head here to walk us through what's happened. What are you watching for the next couple of weeks, Adam? What do you think is going to happen from here?
My whole focus right now is the relationship between Xi and Trump. I think the rest of the world has absorbed the tariffs. They've kind of settled down. They've brought people to the negotiating table. My entire concern right now is on the macro, the political macro of Xi and Trump. We want these two men to be able to come to an agreement. They're both very strong men, both are leaders of very powerful nations, both leaders of the two biggest militaries on the planet, the biggest economies on the planet. Both have big egos, and neither wants to lose face. I hope Trump can understand the cultural piece of within China, within Asian nations, it's so important that the leader does not lose face. That's what this is all about. They can come to an agreement, but this is all about ensuring that neither party loses face. I'm watching for deals being done in the background. That is, we've seen a lot of deals being done on camera. The most blatant one, of course, was between, well, the failure of a deal between Zelensky and Trump in the White House on camera. Spectacular television. But you're not going to see that with Xi and Trump. That's going to be happening behind closed doors. The leaders of Asian nations don't work that way. They don't want the show pony stuff in front of the camera of doing deals or failing deals. So my whole focus is ensuring that the relationship between Trump and Xi is sorted. Those economies are interdependent on one another. It's a fascinating relationship when you really think about it. Two powerhouses that are enemies and friends, the greatest of enemies and the greatest of trading partners. A fascinating dynamic because you can see the friction between the two nations, but they are absolutely interdependent on each other. America needs Chinese production and China needs American capital. It's as simple as that. And if either party loses the production or the capital, they're both screwed. So they have to come to an agreement. They have to make the deal, which they will, to ensure that they both remain independent and powerful, yet interdependent and respectful. So once we get through that, I mean, really, Liam, what's holding us up from there? The tariffs spooked us. Once we get these interest rates dropping, which Trump is going to make happen, we've spoken about that, 50 basis points in Australia, that's a big drop. We've been waiting for that for a long time. More basis points across the rest of the world for the lower interest rates. That, of course, reduces pressure on families. It injects liquidity into the markets. It creates, ironically, confidence, even though reducing interest rates is a consequence of a weak economy. It creates confidence where people say, right, I now have more money. It puts more liquidity into the markets. And then once that's sorted, the next step is strategic reserves of Bitcoin, not just by America, but by other nations who have to follow suit. America is the center of gravity. People are going to follow America, whether they like it or not. And once America starts buying more Bitcoin, it's on, baby. It's on like Donkey Kong. Other nations follow suit. Institutional investors follow suit. And of course, the retail investors, they go all in. Bitcoin to at least $250,000. Let's go, baby.
I love it. Thanks so much for your takes, Adam. It's great to have you back on the show. Please, join us again soon. We love your level head. We love your measured, balanced take on things. And keep fighting the good fight, mate.
You're doing a great job, Liam. Thanks so much.
All right, guys. As always, please have a fantastic weekend from us here at Binance Australia. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and let us know who you'd love to have on the show as well. We'll catch you next week, Binanceans. Bye. Please note that this discussion includes insights from non-affiliated third parties and key opinion leaders. Binance provides this platform for informational and educational purposes only and is not responsible for any content or insights provided. This information should not be considered as financial, tax, or investment advice from Binance.